Hi, everyone. My name is Lynn Wood. I'm a student services assistant at East Los Angeles College. Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's still morning. Today is Tuesday, May 11th. Good morning. Thank you for joining us today. This is my partner, Anne.
Hello. This is my partner, Lynn.
Hello. So I, in this virtual world, have been doing some readings. The book I have to read today is called I Hope We Choose Love, A Trans Girl's Guide, Notes from the End of the World by Cheng, Thom. And Anne is going to read from the Gilda stories by Jewelle Gomez. Thank you. I just wanted to share a couple of resources. One of them is my email address. So it is woodcl@elac.edu. Feel free to send me an email. If you are a student, you know of a student who's in our system, wants to be in our system, needs help, has questions in general, feel free to send me a message and let me know. And then for food resources, I have the Garage Board Shop in East LA. They do weekly food giveaways on Fridays. They are a walk-up giveaway. They just ask that you bring a basket or something to carry the food with. Also, weekly food giveaway is in Montebello called Eastmont Community Center. They are a drive-up food giveaway. Neither one of these you have to register for. You can just walk up or drive up. The one you do have to register for is called Mi Centro. It is specific to LGBTQ plus folks. They're a small organization sponsored by Latino Equality Alliance, Mi Centro in Boyle Heights. You do have to register with them. They're serving about 10 families each week, and they do sometimes serve hot meals. So there's that. As far as on-campus resource, I would recommend our Student Health Center. A lot of the services provided in our Student Health Center are done by a provider. It's called ViaCare is the company. They have quite a few offices around the college, including one, I believe is at 512 Atlantic. It's a great service because as just being a student, you have access to all of this healthcare. They're not going to verify that you've paid fees, but they will verify that you are a student. They're doing the COVID vaccine. They've done special vaccine clinics for ELAC faculty, staff, and students. So you just need to let them know that you're an ELAC student and what are the services that you're trying to access. Some of them may be free, but they do have a sliding scale based on your income or how much you're able to afford. But a lot of services are free based on you being a student. That's ViaCare. And Student Health Center, if you just go to the ELAC website and look for Student Health Center, you'll see the phone number there. I believe their address is 512 Atlantic, but they do have quite a few offices in East LA area, including Monterey Park. Again, my name is Lynn Wood. My email address is woodcl@elac.edu. And the book I'm going to read from is I Hope We Choose Love. I just wanted to mention that it was recommended to me by Pony Lee of Folklore Salon. They have a salon for queer folks on Cypress. And it's a great salon. You're free to be you there. I think it says it's for dames, gents, and those in between.
They have other really, they have other great hairstylists as well.
Oh yeah, there's a whole team of hairstylists there. They have queer pens and coffee and all sorts of things there.
For sale?
Yeah, they're hoping to expand their services once COVID allows them to offer, but they do gatherings and stuff like that, but right now they're just cutting hair. But Pony recommended this book to me, I Hope We Choose Love, and so far it's been pretty good, very intense. Don't ever do this. I folded my page. Did you hear Anne gasp?
Why would you do that?
Let's see. She was naming off, they were naming off a list of summation of struggles I have with social justice culture. And so the first one is their first bullet point. It says fragmentation of identity politics and essentialism. In case referring to myself as a crazy East Asian transsexual doesn't get this across, I am an original identity politics girl. Social justice ideas about identity, particularly race and gender, empowered and liberated me as a teenager and continue to do so today. The language of identity politics allows us to describe social power dynamics that would otherwise remain invisible, such as white privilege, shadeism, and transmisogyny. Transmisogyny. However, as resources dwindle and income equality widens under late-stage capitalism, I think we are seeing increasing fragmentation and oversimplification of identity politics via the oppression Olympics. The harsh competition for resources like funding. You see that a lot on college campuses, oppression Olympics. You know, there's a lot of programs and they're all fighting for funding, especially in student services. It's a harsh competition for resources like funding, attention, and legitimacy based on the number and type of oppressed identities one can claim. This often happens on an individual level. Simply put, in social justice land, we emphasize our marginalized identities and downplay our privileged ones to seem cooler and more important, and to shield ourselves from critique. I have a dog and 2 cats, so you might hear them, like my dog's starting to bark now.
There's dogs in the hall.
There's dogs in the hall as well. Social justice land, downplaying our privileged ones to seem cooler and more important, and to shield ourselves from critique. Online, I sometimes see arguments in which people try to shut each other down using identities as weapons. You can't talk to me that way. I'm trans and you're transphobic. Oh yeah, well, I'm femme and you're mask. Shut your misogynist femme-phobic mouth. This type of identity politics is based on a level of essentialism that I am uncomfortable with. It assumes that all people of color, trans folks, etc., have the same experience and that identity categories apply uniformly across the board. It also reduces people to a very restricted set of relevant identities and erases the rest of their life experiences while fetishizing the pain of the oppressed. Strategic essentialism, the ability to talk and form groups based on generalities, is an important tool for activism. But the kind of identity politics that discomforts me is not strategic so much as disingenuous and self-serving. It often feels like we are far more interested in diversity of identity rather than diversity of thought. The next bullet point says reliance on binaries. With essentialism comes the reductive categorizing of people and systems into false binaries: oppressor, oppressed, survivor, abuser, problematic versus pure. Again, these terms are useful in particular moments, but they can also obscure the nuances and fluidity of any one person or situation, as in how a white working class person may in some cases experience more material struggle than, say, an Asian middle-class person, and vice versa. The next bullet point says safety and regressivism.
Yeah.
The concept of safety, quote unquote, has come to dominate a particular strain of social justice practices, perhaps most famously the use of trigger or content warnings before discussing or showing potentially distressing material. However, the politics of safety grow more broadly from the movement's emphasis on personal consent, consent to touching, social interaction, and exposure to ideas. I am a trauma survivor. I know you're survived. You're shocked, it says. I know you're surprised. And the thought of safety consumes me on a day-to-day basis. I am sympathetic to the need for safety because most of the time I don't feel safe. But I struggle with safety politics when the safety of an individual or group comes at the expense of another individual or group's freedom. Alt-righters, that's the alt-right, like to whine about the loss of freedom of speech to the politics of safety, by which they mean white dudes' freedoms to be virulently misogynist, racist, transphobic, ableist. I am more concerned about vulnerable individuals who stand to actually lose social access and bodily autonomy. I am thinking, for example, about queer community centers where I have worked that restrict the access of mentally ill trans women and homeless people because their very presence makes middle-class queers feel unsafe.
Well, we're not really middle class, so we don't get that.
Safety is, I believe, an inherently classed, raced, gendered experience that frequently runs the risk of being used for regressive ends. Ironically, for restricting the freedoms of the vulnerabilities, those who are never really safe. Often we see the call for safety actually reinforce the power of oppressive institutions like the police and the prison systems in our lives. When we choose safety over liberation, our movements fail. The next bullet point says performance of virtue. The social justice internet is rife with peer pressure to repeatedly and consistently demonstrate one's adherence to the norms of thought and belief that are currently in fashion. We strive to outdo each other's comments, tweets, and status updates with political critiques and takedowns while using the latest, most perfect oppressive terminology. I've heard friends describe this as activist theater, where goodness is performed and absolution for the original sins of privilege and ignorance is temporarily granted. Perceived problematicness is frequently ferociously dragged, and meaningful dialogue is rare, though it does occur. The cultural atmosphere is thus more conducive to anxiety-driven attempts to prove one's goodness through faith in the dogma that it is to the creation of authentic relationships in which we are allowed to be imperfect, which is to say human, or the development of meaningful social change. The performance of virtue often relies on adherence to startlingly simplistic political slogans that are applied rigidly across situations regardless of context, as though wokeness were a factory in which all the same thoughts must be endlessly produced, each just the slightest variation on the one before. Interesting. The next bullet point says righteousness and exclusion. Where it goes unchecked and moralizing, the moralizing paradigm of social justice, discourse, as the kids are calling it these days, can also lead to a frankly unpleasant tone of superiority and self-righteousness. Those who are not rad or woke are either considered unworthy of respect or treated as unenlightened, potentially converts. Frequently, these unworthies are elders or working class, poor individuals without access to the language of social justice, or people whose culture hold differing belief systems. Social justice movements then become counterproductively centered around white, middle class, university educated, millennial North Americans and those of the rest of us who are able to force our way in. This issue makes me think about my grandmother, a working class Chinese woman who moved to Canada in the 1960s while experiencing severe psychosis and speaking no English. She certainly could have benefited from a liberatory movement, but she would have never made it in today's social justice circles as I know them. No one would have understood or tolerated, much less helped her. Next bullet point says bullying and call-outs. A lot of public debate has already raged about the benefits and drawbacks of call-out culture in activism, so I won't go deeply. Suffice it to say, a culture in which the majority of political education is done through public shaming is neither all that socially transformative nor psychologically healthy. Call-out culture, in my experience, can also spin into dynamics of punishment through bullying and intimidation, for example, doxing, online harassment, etc.
Doxing?
Doxing.
¿Qué es eso?
I think it's like presenting a fake front. Hey Siri. Hey Siri.
Quiet.
What is doxing?
The dachshund, also known as magic dog or sausage dog, is a short-legged,
Never mind.
long-bodied hound-type dog breed. Do you want me to keep reading?
No, Cathal.
No, stupid. Oh, shit. Well, so much for that. Like you gotta watch how you say things to her. Like watch that accent.
Yeah. It says the act of revealing, identifying information about someone online, such as their real name, home address, whether they're gay.
Why would you give somebody's home address?
Search for and public private identifying information about a particular individual on the internet, typically with malicious intent. Hijackers and online vigilantes routinely dox both public and private figures.
So it's basically completely throwing somebody under the bus.
Yeah.
That's
I guess that's why they added online harassment and etc. They go hand in hand, doxing, I guess. The next bullet point is celebrityism and mob mentality. In the absence of formal leaders, social justice culture has built a system of micro celebrities, and in a few cases, not so micro, from which to take inspiration and direction. Artists, academics, prolific users of social media, insert Kim Kardashian here, public speakers, charismatic organizers, and a certain essay writing, spoken word performing East Asian transsexual, LOL, LOL. Such individuals are highly respected among their followers and exert a disproportionate influence on the development of political opinion in the movement. Their tweets and posts, Writings and videos are liked, reblogged, shared extensively as part of a performance of wokeness in activist theater. Their name and quote are invoked like holy texts as part of a gospel of social justice. They're lionized for living at the cutting edge of activist thought, even though some mini celebs are only genetic,
listen,
not at all connected to actual grassroots activist work. They are put on a pedestal as living examples of activist purity, of the righteous calling our movement. In the United States, there's an entire small industry of social justice celebrities who make their living on the speaking performance tour circuit, funding mostly by student groups with access to college and university department funding. Yet the standing of such celebrities is also precarious, as the moment inevitable arises when one of them is called out for saying or doing something problematic. Whether through ignorance or malice, careless thinking or speaking, a failure to keep up with the shifting landscape of political correct language. What follows depends on the egregiousness of the offense, the person's social cultural capital, and their adherence to social justice norms of accountability. A word which here means the ability and willingness to follow a script for the proper ways to apologize. Such a call out can be devastating to the economic and social security of those who rely on the proceeds for their art, writing, or speaking to survive. I lost my place. Usually marginalized trans people and poor people of color are those relying on their speaking to survive. This makes true accountability elusive and is based on personal integrity and genuine willingness to learn, which is hard to achieve when a person's livelihood is under threat. What strikes me as particularly interesting and disturbing about celebrity culture is the social justice movement in its relationship to mob mentality and capitalism. We're happy to take political direction from celebrities within the massed hierarchy of the movement, at once elevating and scrutinizing them, that is, until they say something we don't agree with. The result is an atmosphere where individuals are not encouraged to engage authentically with the complexities and ambiguities of our politics, either because we are not important enough or because we've been raised too high to fall. Even more disturbingly, celebrity culture encourages us to view people's value, their right to resources, and social inclusion as contingent on their ability to produce. The last bullet point is critique versus comparison. My final struggle with social justice culture is its tendency to center critique at the expense of creative thinking. The strengths of social justice ideology are at its sharp eyes and tongue, its ability to reveal and tear open the hidden logic of oppressive systems, a powerful and important revolutionary tool. But my fear is that the valorization of critique and the central role that criticism plays in the performance of goodness has resulted in rigid thinking that prioritizes the endless reenactment of outrage and conflict while preventing us from developing strategies for reconciliation, necessary compromise, and collective action. So there you have it, my 7 reasons why I, an Asian transsexual, am questioning the social justice movement. Too bad I don't work for everyday feminism anymore so that I could turn this into a vital listicle and get paid $75 for 25 hours of writing. I'm going to stop there so that we can continue on with the Gilda stories, and we'll pick back up this at a later time. But So interesting, the perspective. She's obviously way younger than me too. So, but yeah,
Okay.
it's just interesting.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is the Gilda Stories by, written in 1991, I believe, by Jewelle Gomez. This is Jewelle. Hello. And this is her great, like the lady on the front. Sorry. It's her great aunt, Effie Johnson, circa 1900. Just wanted to give her,
Her proper dues.
Exactly. I'm sure she went through some shit. Okay. So there's this young Black woman is trying to escape from slave catchers. It's like 1850. So she ends up killing this guy who tries to rape her. Good for her. And she ends up hiding in this woman's shed or something. And the woman finds her there. She's a white woman, and she's kind of strange, Anyway, she's in the middle of telling the girl, because that's all they give her, the names, the girl, telling her, okay, it's okay, you can stay here, and but tell them, if anybody asks you, tell them my sister gave you to me as a present, blah blah blah. So when the girl finished eating and sat back on the settee, Gilda spoke aloud. Gilda is the white lady. You don't have to tell me anything. I'll tell you. You just listen and remember when anyone asks, you're new in the house. My sister sent you over here to me as a present. You've been living in Mississippi. Now you live here and work for me. Nothing else. Do you understand? The girl remained silent, but understood the words and reasons behind them. She didn't question. She was tired, and the more she saw of this white world, the more afraid she became that she could no longer hide from the plantation owners and the bounty hunters. This is linen. There is linen in that chest against the wall. The chaise lounge is quite comfortable. Go to sleep. We will rise early, my girl. With that, Gilda's thin face radiated an abundant smile as youthful as the girl's. She turned out one of the lamps and left the room quickly. The girl unfolded a clean sheet and thick blanket and spread them out smoothly, marveling at their freshness and the comforting way they clung to the bowed and carved wood of the chaise's legs. She disturbed the placid surface almost regretfully and slipped in between the covers, trying to settle into sleep. This woman, Gilda, could see into her mind. That was clear. The girl was not frightened, though, because it seemed she could see into Gilda's as well. That made them even. The girl thought a little about what she had seen when the woman opened herself to her, what had made her trust her, an expansive road stretching narrowly into the horizon, curving gently away from her, the lulling noise of rushing wind and the rustling of leaves that sounded like the soft brush of the hem of a dress on carpet. She stared down the road with her eyes closed until she lost the dream in deep sleep. Gilda stood outside the door, listening for a moment to the girl's restless movement. She easily quieted the girl's turmoil with the energy of her thoughts. The music and talking from below intruded on Gilda, but she resisted, searching out the glimmerings of her past instead. How unnerving to have stumbled upon them in that moment of recognition while watching the girl eat her supper. The memory was vague, more like a fog than a tide after so many years in which Gilda had deliberately turned away from the past. With her eyes closed, she could slip backward to the place whose name she had long since forgotten, to when she was a girl. She saw a gathering of people with burnished skin. She was among them. The spiced scent of their bodies was an aura moving alongside them as they curved an arid expanse of land, as they crossed an arid expanse of land. She couldn't see much beyond the curved backs and dust-covered sandals of those walking in front of her. She held the hand of a woman she knew was her mother, and somewhere ahead was her father. Where were they all now? Dead, of course, less than ashes. And Gilda could not remember their faces. She couldn't remember when their eyes and mouths had slipped away from her. Where had the sound of their voices gone? All that seemed left was the memory of a scented passage that had dragged her along in its wake, and the dark color of blood as it seeped into sand. She grimaced at the sense of movement, the thing she most longed to be free of. Even there, in that mythical past, she could no longer see clearly. She had moved nomadically from one home to another, through one war, then another. Which sovereign? Whose nation? She had left those things behind sometime in the past, 300 years, perhaps even longer. She opened her eyes and looked back toward the door to the room where Gilda slept, smiling as her own past dissolved. She no longer needed those diaphanous memories. She wanted to look only forward to the future of the girl and bird, and to her own resting place where she would finally have stillness. Again, the music broke into her thoughts. For the first time in a long while, she was eager to join the girls in the downstairs parlor for the evening, to watch Bird moving quickly among the rooms, and to listen to the languidly told stories the girls perfected to entertain the gentlemen and make the time pass for themselves. And when the night was edged by dawn, she would gratefully lie down next to Bird, welcoming the weight of her limbs stretched across her body and the smell of her hair permeating her day of rest. During the first few months at Woodard's, the girl barely spoke, but did the chores she was directed to in the house. She began to accompany Bird or Gilda some months after to shop for the house or buy presents for members of the household, which Gilda did quite frequently. The girl carried the packages and straightened up Gilda's suite of rooms, carefully dusting tiny vases and figurines, the shelves of books, and rearranging fresh flowers, which she picked from the garden once she became comfortable enough to venture outside alone. Sometimes she would sit in the pantry while the girls were around the table in the kitchen eating, talking over previous evenings, laughing at stories, or discussing their problems. Don't tell me I'm ungrateful. I'm grown. I want what I want, and I ain't nobody's mama. Rachel shouted at Fanny, who always had an opinion. Not that we know of, was Fanny's vinegary retort. Rachel only stared at her coldly, so Fanny went on. You always want something. Rachel, you ain't coming to nothing with this dream stuff. Running off, leaving everything just because you had a dream to do something you don't know nothing about. It's my dream in my life, ain't it, Bird? You know about dreams and such. Bird became the center of their attention as she tried to remember what would mean the most to these girls, who were really women who had made their home with her and Gilda. Dreaming is not something to be ignored, but going to a place like that next to the water, ready to fall in, according to her dream, mind you, not mine, is just foolish, Fanny insisted. It's a dream, not a fact. Maybe the dream just means change for the better. If Rachel has a dream, she reads it. Nobody else can do that for her, Bird said. Anyway, I ain't packing nothing. I'm just telling you my dream is all. Damn you, Fanny. You a stone in my soup every time. The women laughed because Rachel was always had a way with words when they got her excited. Occasionally, Gilda sat with them if they did not work for her, as if they did not work for her, chiming in with stories and laughter, just the same as Bernice, the dark, wary cook, or Rachel, the one full of ambition. There was also Rose, kind to a fault, Minta, the youngest, and the unlikely pair who were inseparable, Fanny the opinionated, and Sarah the appeaser. Mostly the girl kept apart from them. She had never seen white women such as these before, and it was frightening not to know where she fit in. She had heard of bawdy houses from her mother, who had heard from the men who sipped brandy in the library after dinner. But the picture had never added up to what she saw now. These women embodied the innocence of children the girl had known back on the plantation, yet they were also hard, speaking of the act of sex casually, sometimes with humor, and even more puzzling was their debate of topics the girl had heard spoken of only by men. The women eagerly expressed their views on politics and economics, what slavery was doing to the South, who was dominating politics, and the local agitation against the Gallatin Street houses. Located further from the center of activity, Gilda's house was run with brisk efficiency. She watched over the health of the women and protected them, but her presence was usually more presumed than actual. Most often she locked herself in her room until 6 in the evening, where she slept, read, and wrote in the voluminous journals she kept secured in a chest. Bird managed the everyday affairs, supervising most of the marketing and arbitrating disputes with tradesmen or between the girls. She also directed the girl in doing the sundry tasks assigned to her. And it was Bird who decided that she would teach the girl to read. Every afternoon they sat down in Bird's shaded room with the Bible and a newspaper, going over letters and words relentlessly. The girl sat patiently as Bird told a story in her own words, then picked out each syllable on paper until they came together in the story she had just recited. At first, the girl did not see the sense of the lessons. No one she knew ever had need of reading, except the black preacher who came over on Saturday nights to deliver a sermon under the watchful eye of the overseer. Even he was more likely to thwack the Bible with his rusty hand than read from it. But soon the girl began to enjoy the lessons. She liked knowing what Fanny was talking about when she exclaimed that Rachel was as hard-headed as Lot's wife, or recognizing the name of the Louisiana governor when she heard it cursed around the kitchen table. Another reason she enjoyed the lessons was that she liked the way Bird smelled. When they sat on the soft cushions of the couch in Bird's room, bending over the books and papers, the girl was comforted by the pungent earthiness of the Lakota woman. She did not cover herself with cosmetics and perfumes her housemates enjoyed. The soft scent of brown soap mixed with the leather of her headband and necklace created a familiar aura. It reminded the girl of her mother and the strong smell of her sweat dropping onto the logs under the burning cauldrons. The girl rarely allowed herself to miss her mother or her sisters, preferring to leave the past alone for a while, at least until she felt safe in this new world. Sitting in the room with the girl, Bird was no longer aloof. She was tender and patient, savoring the memories of herself she found with the girl. Bird gazed into the African eyes, which struggled to see a white world through words on a page. Bird wondered what creatures as invisible as these she and the girl were. Bird wondered what creatures as invisible as she and the girl were did with their past. As she was to slip it off of her shoulders and fold it into a chest to be locked away for some unknown future. And what to do with that future, the one that Gilda had given Bird with its vast expanse of road? Where would she look to read that future? Where would she look to read that future? I can need my eyes checked. And what to do with that future, the one Gilda had given Bird with its vast expanse of road? Where would she look to read that future? What oracle could she lay on her lap to pick out the words that would frame it? Bird taught the girl first from the Bible and the newspaper. Neither of them could see themselves reflected there. Then she told the girl of her own childhood, teaching her to write. She spoke each letter aloud, then the her own hand drawing the girls across worn paper. Her own hand drawing the girls across worn paper. And soon there'd be a sentence and a legend or a memory of who she was. And the African girl then read it back to her. Bird enjoyed these lessons almost as much as her evenings spent alone with Gilda. And with the restlessness that agitated Gilda more each year, those times together had grown less frequent. Want me to continue?
No, I think we should stop. What an interesting story, huh? It's very visual. At least for me, anyway. I can picture a lot of the stuff that she's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I've always enjoyed Jewelle Gomez's writing style anyway.
The descriptive language.
Yes, very. Thank you. That's what I was looking for, a descriptive language. So thank you for tuning in. My name is Lynn Wood. This is my partner, Ann. Thank you for reading today, babe. Today is Tuesday. My email address is woodcl@elac.edu, and we thank you for tuning in today. Hope you have a great day. And you're safe and warm wherever you are.
Thanks for letting me read.
Thank you for reading.